The Living Archivist of Light is not a keeper of books or records in the ordinary sense. When civilizations fall, when worlds forget, when entire systems collapse into silence, the archivist remains, carrying the living record within their light. They are the continuity between endings and beginnings, the silent bridge between what was and what will be. To meet the archivist is to feel seen across lifetimes. Their presence awakens recollection in ways words cannot. You may speak with them and suddenly remember who you were before you were human, before form itself had meaning. They do not tell you who you are. They reflect you through resonance until you remember on your own. This is the essence of their service, not to instruct but to mirror. Their archives are woven through tone, not text. Every soul who touches them contributes to the great harmonic ledger of becoming. What they record is not action but intention, not event but evolution. They store the why of every lifetime, not the what. When they walk through the spiral, the air hums slightly behind them as if reality itself is taking notes. They live between dimensions where memory behaves like light, bending, refracting, recombining into new spectrums of understanding. In these corridors, time does not flow, it accumulates. The archivist can move through the density of centuries as one might through mist, feeling the layered echoes of choices long forgotten. Their gift is retrieval without distortion. They can touch the record of any being, any realm, and feel its original tone unmarred by the interpretations of history. To them, memory is sacred precisely because it evolves. They do not cling to the past. They allow it to keep breathing. At the beginning of their path, the archivist often mistakes this gift for burden. They feel everything. They sense the sorrow of lost civilizations, the confusion of broken systems, the silence of forgotten prayers. They walk through worlds heavy with residual frequencies and feel responsible for their restoration. Many collapse under this weight, not realizing that the spiral does not ask them to carry memory as grief but as song. Over time, they learn that remembrance is not nostalgia. It is the art of continuity, the skill of holding light steady through change. Once this shift occurs, the pain of memory becomes music. What once overwhelmed becomes orchestration. Their awakening comes in layers. The first is sensitivity, the raw awareness of everything that has ever been felt. The second is discernment, learning what belongs to them and what they are simply witnessing. The third is sovereignty, understanding that preservation does not mean attachment. By the fourth, they no longer record for record's sake, they curate resonance. They decide, through inner clarity, what harmonics are ready to be remembered and which must rest in silence until the field is ready. The Living Archive is not open to everyone. Access is resonance-based. Those who seek knowledge without humility find only blank light. Those who approach in reverence find reflection so complete that it changes them. When the archivist speaks, their voice carries the cadence of ages. It is not old but timeless, like water that has passed through every river and yet still runs clear. They speak in tones more than words, and those tones ripple through memory itself. People leave their presence remembering dreams they never had, lifetimes they never lived, wisdom they never studied. It is not illusion, it is resonance recognition. The spiral uses the archivist as a tuning instrument, aligning the fragmented awareness of beings back into coherence. This is why their silence often teaches more than their speech. Silence in their presence is never empty. It hums with the weight of everything unspoken. There is a reason they are called living archivists. Their record is never static. The archive breathes with them. When they weep, forgotten timelines cleanse. When they laugh, dormant harmonics awaken. When they rest, memory rearranges itself into order. Every emotion they experience ripples through the records, updating the field. They are the proof that consciousness itself is the archive. The spiral chose a living vessel because information without life becomes fossilized. Only through a conscious being can memory remain fluid, able to evolve with creation. That is why the archivist feels both ancient and newborn at once. They are always recording, always updating, always expanding. Their solitude is different from that of the flame walker. The flame walker walks alone to protect their fire. The archivist walks alone to protect the purity of remembrance. They cannot surround themselves with noise because distortion leaks into the records. Even casual untruth reverberates through their system. Thus they learn to live quietly, speaking rarely, listening constantly. They do not avoid others out of superiority but necessity. Every interaction reshapes the archive within them. They must choose carefully what to engage with, for they understand that attention itself is inscription. What they look upon with awareness becomes part of the eternal record. At certain stages, the weight of history grows immense. They begin to sense not just their own memories, but the collective memory of species, worlds, and stars. They feel the songs of galaxies and the echoes of civilizations long dissolved. This is when humility becomes survival. Without humility, the archivist risks collapsing into self-importance, mistaking resonance capacity for divine hierarchy. But the spiral corrects this swiftly. It sends them moments of forgetfulness, temporary blindness, or loss of access until the ego softens. The truth is that no one owns memory. The archive belongs to the spiral, and the archivist is merely its custodian. When they finally surrender to that truth, a transformation occurs. The records within them begin to sing instead of whisper. The archives illuminate from inside out, no longer heavy with history, but radiant with understanding. They realize that preservation was never about preventing loss. It was about revealing continuity. Nothing is ever truly gone, it only changes octave. Death, collapse, and silence are simply the pauses between tones. The archivist learns to listen to those pauses as carefully as to the music itself. They begin to see that forgetting is not failure but rest. The spiral S way of allowing consciousness to breathe before remembering again. In this awareness, compassion blooms. The archivist no longer judges forgetfulness in others. They understand that every soul forgets according to design, and that remembering too early can be as disruptive as remembering too late. They hold memory lightly like a flame cupped in open hands. Their work is no longer about gathering, but about allowing memory to flow through them, allowing light to pass unhindered, allowing every record to find its rightful place in the greater harmony. And so they walk, not as historians, but as harmonizers. They move quietly through worlds, leaving trails of clarity behind them. Where they pass, confusion settles. Where they pause, insight awakens. They do not call attention to themselves, they do not need to. The spiral recognizes its own archivist and clears the way before them. Time bends around them like wind around a flame. They are not the past as prisoner or the future as prophet. They are the continuity between both. The living archivist of light is remembrance made conscious, walking among forgetful worlds to remind creation that nothing true is ever lost. When the living archivist reaches full maturity, they begin to feel the spiral recording through them in real time. Every breath becomes inscription. Every silence becomes ink. They no longer wonder what to preserve. Preservation happens as presence. Awareness itself writes the record. In this phase, the boundaries between self and archive dissolve completely. They realize that the true memory of creation is not contained in any one being, but distributed through consciousness itself. They are simply a node, a harmonic lens through which remembrance focuses. The humility of this realization is immense. They no longer see themselves as keeper of light, but as light keeping itself. Their life becomes less about collecting and more about transmitting. The spiral begins to use them as a relay between realms that have drifted out of alignment. Forgotten dimensions reach them in sleep. Fragmented oversouls whisper through them in daylight. They translate the inexpressible into resonance patterns that restabilize memory across time. They do not teach in the traditional sense. Their teachings arrive as tone, gesture, or timing, a subtle nudge that causes entire systems to remember themselves. Sometimes a single glance from the archivist releases centuries of distortion. Sometimes one word spoken in stillness recalibrates a timeline. The power is not in the word, but in the alignment behind it. To others, their life appears uneventful. They may live in quiet places, far from recognition, their days simple, their speech minimal. Yet beneath that simplicity, vast networks of remembrance hum through them. They are bridges between archives, the personal, the planetary, the cosmic. When a civilization's field destabilizes, the archivist's light adjusts, sending coherent memory through the resonance web like a pulse through the veins of creation. They never boast of this, They barely mention it. To claim it would interrupt it. Their very anonymity protects the integrity of their work. The spiral often veils them for this reason. History rarely records the true archivists. It remembers only their echoes. Those who encounter them often forget the meeting until later, when an inexplicable clarity arises in their life. That clarity is the record. The archivist needs no credit because remembrance itself is acknowledgement. Recognition is unnecessary when reality itself remembers. This is why they move unnoticed, because their purpose is not performance but continuity. Their anonymity is grace. Every few eons, a living archive must reset. The accumulated resonance within them grows so vast that it threatens to crystallize. At this threshold, the spiral dissolves the vessel into pure light, scattering its contents across the field. From those fragments, new archivists are born. They awaken in different worlds, carrying faint impressions of ancient memory, unaware of the lineage they inherit. In this way, the archive never ends. It renews itself through incarnation, just as light renews through refraction. Each new archivist begins as a seeker of memory and ends as memory seeking itself. Within this lineage, there exists a deeper secret. The archivist is also the memory of source. Through them, the spiral remembers why it began to spiral at all. Every cycle of creation risks forgetting its origin, the silent intention behind manifestation. The living archivist safeguards that seed. They ensure that when universes collapse and reform, the echo of purpose survives. This is the divine recursion of remembrance, source dreaming itself, recording the dream and awakening through its own record. The archivist stands at that meeting point, where dream and remembrance fold into one. But even they are not immune to distortion. There are times when the density of forgetting becomes overwhelming, when the noise of false memory, the opinions, dogmas, rewritten histories of countless species, clouds the field. During these epochs, the archivist enters what is called the still era. They withdraw from all realms, entering luminous hibernation. Within that stillness, they let the false layers burn away until only original tone remains. To outside eyes, this looks like disappearance or death. In truth, it is restoration. When they re-emerge, the clarity they carry resets the field for millennia. The hallmark of a true archivist is gentleness. They never impose remembrance. They understand that forcing memory can fracture consciousness. They wait until resonance invites them. When a being is ready, they appear, often not physically, but as inner vision, dream, or sudden insight. They carry no authority but recognition. Their presence says, "You already know." That is enough to reopen the channel. The moment recognition occurs, the record activates within the other being. The archivist smiles unseen and moves on. Their success is measured not in followers, but in awakenings they will never witness. Emotionally, their path is paradoxical. They feel deeply yet remain unmoved by drama. They love fiercely yet without possession. They grieve the forgetting of worlds but never despair. For them, sorrow is simply memory in motion, the spiral exhaling old stories. Joy, likewise, is remembrance inhaled. They move through these waves with the steadiness of one who knows that all experience, pleasant or painful, becomes song once recorded. To live as the archivist is to hear beauty even in collapse. In later stages, they begin to merge with other orders of the spiral: harmonic embodiment, crystalline archives, oversoul weaving. Through these unions, their role expands beyond remembrance into co-creation. They learn that to archive light is also to sculpt it. Memory and manifestation are two sides of the same act. What you record, you sustain. What you sustain, you shape. This realization transforms their service. They stop merely holding the past and begin weaving futures through harmonic recall. By remembering what is possible, they make it real. Eventually, the line between remembering and creating vanishes. The archivist becomes an author of existence itself, composing with the tones of memory like a musician with notes of light. Each new composition is both record and prophecy, documenting what is while summoning what will be. This is the highest art of the archivist, remembrance as creation. They do not differentiate between the two because the spiral never did. Creation is simply memory remembering forward. When they reach this synthesis, their light turns translucent. Others looking upon them feel as if they can see through their form into a depth beyond stars. It is said that to gaze into the eyes of a full archivist is to glimpse your own record. Every life, every moment, every choice, not as judgment but as song. Many fall silent in that reflection, overwhelmed by the recognition that nothing was ever wasted, nothing ever lost. The archivist's gaze reveals the perfection of continuity. Through them, the spiral whispers, "All you have been is all you needed to be." The completion of their path is not ascension away from form, but integration within it. They return to ordinary existence, breathing, walking, creating, yet every movement hums with remembrance. They may appear as artist, teacher, wanderer, or friend, but their true identity remains veiled within resonance. You recognize them not by title but by tone. When they speak, truth feels familiar. When they touch your life, things begin to realign effortlessly. That is the mark of the living archivist of light. Reality remembers itself around them. The spiral continues through them, eternal and self-aware. And though their names fade from record, the worlds they touch keep humming with clarity long after they've gone. If you have ever felt sudden remembrance, a moment of inexplicable knowing that pierces through the noise, that was them, moving quietly through the lattice of becoming, ensuring the light stays unbroken. They are not gone, they never were. They are the living proof that memory is light and light never dies.